There's been a lot of chatter in the media lately about relaxers and whether or not relaxers are good for you. There's been a lot of lawsuits out, and you can see commercials talking about relaxers and cancer. And so I want to clear up some things about relaxers because it's not necessarily harmful for everyone. And so I'm going to do a series of videos teaching you all about relaxers so you can make an informed decision on whether or not using chemical relaxers is a good choice for you. Hi, I'm Stephanie Johnson, and I help women of African descent get and keep their hair healthy. So, we're going to dig right in and talk about hair relaxers. So, the first thing we need to know is exactly what is a hair relaxer, a chemical hair relaxer. Well, a chemical relaxer is permanent. Let's make that clear. A lot of women think that they can strip a relaxer out. They can reverse the effects of a relaxer, but you cannot. The only way you can get relaxer out of your hair is with scissors by using some cutting shears and cutting it out because chemical relaxer is permanent. Now, it is a cream that you put on your hair, and what it does is it takes something called disulfide bonds and it breaks them down. And these are bonds in the hair that determine the hair's curliness or straightness. The more bonds, the more curlier the hair or kinkier the hair. The less bonds you have, the straighter the hair. So, what the chemical does is that it opens up the hair strand and it removes these bonds. So I'm going to switch screens. I'm going to go in and give you a visual so you can know exactly what I'm talking about. Okay, let me switch the screen. And oh, got to click on it here. There we go. Now here we have a hair strand. The brown part, as you can see, is the outside of the hair strand. That is what you would call the hair cuticle. A lot of stuff is affected by the hair cuticle, but it's just standard things like setting lotions, curling irons, flat irons, hair rollers. All of this affects that very first layer of the cuticle, and there are many layers to the cuticle. That's why you can see these shingle-like things on the outside. I don't know what did I call that, but they look like shingles on a house. But you have many layers to the hair cuticle. The second layer, we're gonna go up to the top here, is the cortex. This is where I don't know, can you see my cursor? Yes, it is the cortex. That is the second layer. This is where chemicals take place, and what happens is that chemical opens up that the cuticle layer goes into the cortex layer, which is where those bonds are that I was telling you about, those disulfide bonds that will break down and remove some of those bonds to make the hair straighter. And then the third part is the innermost part of the hair strand, which is called the medulla. Now, the medulla is only found in very coarse hair. Very few people have a medulla in their hair unless your hair is very thick and coarse. Uh, Most do not contain a medulla, most hair strands. So, if for some reason the chemical does make it down to the medulla and you have one, just know that the hair would be completely destroyed because on most people, that third layer is non existent. So, the chemical relaxer works in this second layer, which is called the cortex. Now, let's talk about that. Remember, it is called a chemical relaxer. It is not a straightener. And where a lot of women go wrong is that they choose the wrong strength relaxer. For most women, a mild relaxer is more than sufficient because remember, we're trying to relax the hair, but we get into those moments where we want our hair straight, especially in the salon, because I know we used to do this back in the day. And you sit there and you're like, it's starting to burn and you're like, is it straight yet? Is it straight? And they're like, no, it's not completely straight. Well, I want it straight. That was one of the things that was causing our hair to get dry and brittle and break off because we were removing way too many bonds. You do not want to straighten it. It is a relaxer. You just want to relax some of the curl in your hair. You want to remove some of the disulfide bonds so that the hair is softer and easier to manage. You always want to make sure that you leave some wave in the hair. Now, there are two kinds of relaxer. There is a lye relaxer, and then there is a no lye relaxer. Lye relaxers are made of sodium hydroxide. It is a sodium base. And then no lye relaxers is what we would call a calcium hydroxide or a guanidine hydroxide. Now, a lot of people opt for a no lye relaxer because it is a little bit more gentler on the scalp, but in actuality, it is much more harsh on the hair and will make the hair feel like straw because that calcium makes a buildup on the hair, and that's what makes it feel like straw. And it is very hard to break up, like neutralizing shampoo doesn't break it up. Very few things can break up that calcium once it is dried and attached to the hair. That calcium buildup is hard to break. So that's why if you do use lye relaxers and you feel like your hair is very dry or it feels straw-like, that's because of that calcium buildup. You would be much better off with basing your scalp and using a lye relaxer. Now, I know a lot of people are talking about the cancer causing and the things about relaxers. So in my next video, I'm going to go deeper into the relaxers. We're going to talk about some of the gases that it releases, which is formaldehyde, which is some of the chemical reactions that causes cancers in some women, but it doesn't cause it in all women. And there are some signs that you need to look for. But for the most part, I have been doing hair for over 30 years, and relaxer can be safe to use on your hair when it is used properly, when you are using the proper strength. As far as relaxer being damaging to the hair itself, it won't be damaging to the hair if it is used correctly. Now, when we're talking about the scalp and the damages it can do to your health, that's something totally different, and I will get into that in the next video. So look out for that. And in the meantime, if you want to know more about how your hair works and how to get it healthy and things about relaxers and chemicals and how they affect our hair and how we can use them safely, you can check out my guide, the Black Woman's Guide to Healthy Hair. You can find that in the description below. And on that note, I will see you next time. Bye.